this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to compare two flagship VR headsets, the HTC Vive Pro 2 and the Pimax Vision 8KX. Now these are two very expensive premium virtual reality headsets for PC that'll set you back a serious amount of money, but also pack some seriously interesting specs with some really good quality visuals and a really nice experience in terms of what you get at the end for your money. And this is a video to compare the two. Now I've done unboxing and review videos on these separately, and I'll link to those in the description. But here I want to talk to you about the differences between them and show off some of the features of them. Now you can see quite a significant difference between the aesthetics of the two headsets, although they both have blue accents on them, and a very similar setup in terms of the headband design and the outer ear cup speakers, etc. They also both work with the Valve base station setup, and both require such in order to work properly, in order to get you that tracking goodness. You can purchase the headset separately or with all the things that you need, and doing so in either instance will set you back a significant amount of money, but you do get the very best VR experiences this way with some serious visuals. I'll talk to you about that experience as we go through, but you can already see that both the headsets are very striking in their design. The Vive Pro 2 has this black faceplate on it with those pock marks for the tracking purposes, and obviously then also has the classic Vive controllers and the Vive base stations as an option. It's worth noting though that you can use Valve's knuckle controllers with the Pimax, and obviously it will also work with other things like the facial tracking add-on and all the other Valve Vive goodness in terms of the tracking modules and things like that. So both of these headsets are upgradable with extra purchases to make them even more interesting, but as standard they're also very appealing. You'll see a very nice premium design on both of them with a good solid headband design and a nice fit. One of the things that I found interesting is that Pimax is significantly heavier, coming in at 984 grams versus the 850 grams on the Vive Pro 2. So they're quite a bit of difference in terms of the weight, and yet they're both wonderfully comfortable to wear. Now you can see all the things that you get with the Vive Pro 2 here if you buy the full kit. That includes obviously the Valve tracking base stations, the controllers, all the cables that you need to plug it in, and everything else. Obviously these are also part of that system, and you need to set them up in your room in order to track and monitor your movement in VR, and it will track the movement of the controllers and the headset, and it's a fairly straightforward affair. When I reviewed the Vive Pro 2, I said I was a bit disappointed that they haven't moved towards inside-out tracking capabilities like other more recent VR headsets that have been launched. Even something like the Rift S, which is quite old now, has inside-out tracking, and that allows you to not have to worry about external base stations like this, and these can be a faff. However, they do still give the best and most accurate tracking experience with a lot less hassle in terms of problems of tracking, but the initial setup and just sort of getting it running or having a space to even set them up is a bit of a faff. Now the Vive Pro 2 connects to your PC by connecting in through this cable into the control box, and then via USB and power cable, so you need to connect a USB connection to your PC, DisplayPort connection and a power connection, and you'll note this little control box for doing all that, so you have to sort of plug all these things in to make sure it connects. It is also compatible with the Vive wireless adapter, but it is worth noting that you will notice a drop in resolution. Now I'm going to leave all the specifications in the description, but one of the things of note is the significant difference in the resolution, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But the Pimax has a much better display setup with two lenses that are capable of up to 4K per eye. That's 3,840 pixels by 2,160 versus the 2448 by 2448 per eye on the Vive Pro 2. So you do get a significantly more impressive experience with the Pimax, but both of these headsets require a beast of a PC in order to run. In fact, you really won't get a very good experience with the Pimax unless you're running a 3080 or a 3090 graphics card. So you really need a good solid investment with this. The Vive Pro 2 can manage with a much lesser machine. However, in order to get that top quality experience, you really do need the full setup and a really powerful gaming machine in order to make the most of it. And you can see the bits and bobs that I got with the Pimax here. Now, it's worth noting that I was sent just the headset and I had to acquire the classic Vive controllers and the base stations in order to get it to work. But the connection actually is a bit simpler because you have a DisplayPort cable and two USB cables that then plug into your PC. It's 4.5 meter cable, but there's no additional power connections. One thing that I thought was interesting though is that you do have a power button on the headset and volume controls directly on there as well. So you have a little bit of easy setup there. We will note, as I said earlier, the sort of similarities between the two headsets though. Although the Pimax is absolutely massive and you can see the sort of side-to-side length of the thing, it's very wide, it does sort of fit on the head in the same way. I noted already that this is the heavier of the two. It's quite a bit heavier on the head. However, I did note that because of the way the headband works and the extra padding and that I found it to be remarkably comfortable when gaming. I found that I could game on this for quite a good amount of time and not have a problem. The Vive Pro 2 is also really well balanced and set up. They've obviously worked hard to ensure that you have a good balance in terms of the setup and the way the headband sits. But you'll notice the similarities in just the way both headsets fit on the head and how they sit there. You also see some other similarities in terms of the ear cup design. So you have these little external speakers that you can move in and out of place, but they also will either sit on your head or not. Now with the Vive Pro 2, you have the ear cups sitting directly on you, but with the Pimax, you actually have the option to have them either sitting off or on, and you can change between the two, and I'll show you what I mean with that a bit more in a minute. But what you'll notice is just the sheer size difference between the Pimax and the Vive Pro 2. The Pimax is significantly bigger, and that's because of the screen design and the lenses, and you're going to see a significant difference in that in a second when I show you the two compared side by side. There are some other interesting differences in specs. The Vive Pro 2 is capable of up to 120 Hz refresh rate and has a true 120 degree field of view, at least that's what they say, whereas the Pimax is capable of up to 200 degree field of view, and it will go between 60, 75, 90 and 114 Hz in terms of the refresh rate. Now I want to give you a vision of the most interesting difference between these two headsets. So here you can see the Vive Pro 2 lenses. As I said, these are impressive. They do deliver a really nice experience. A fast switch LCD IPS panel gives you a total of 4,896 pixels by 2,448 pixels, and a very good experience with very minimal screen door effect, if any at all. It's a really clear experience. I found it to be one of the best VR experiences I've had. A really brilliant view into the VR world and a very nice setup in terms of the lens design. However, when you stack it up against the Pimax, you're going to see quite a bit of difference. I've already said that the Pimax has a significantly higher pixel count. It gives you 4K per eye, so you get an Ultra HD display. But what you'll see is the sheer size of the lenses. They're absolutely massive. You've got a really large field of view, a large side-to-side field of view, and a really significant sort of screen effect inside your eyes. The IPD adjustment goes between 60 and 70 versus 57 to 70 on the Vive Pro 2, because the kind of similar there. But what you're going to see is when you roll the wheel on the Pimax, you can see quite a lot of movement in those. And I found it really easy to get both of these into the sweet spot for me. But what I was struck by when you put this headset on is just how much of the world you're immersed by when using it. They're obviously significant large lenses that sit over the eye and give you a really good experience. Now, just to show, because I unfortunately didn't have the Vive Pro 2 to hand when I was reviewing the Pimax, but you can see it here stacked up against the Quest 2, and you can see just how much larger the lenses are. They're absolutely massive, and that leads to a fantastic experience and a really wonderful virtual reality experience if you have the machine to power it. More on that in a minute. Now I want to show you a little bit more about what I was talking about with the Pimax setup on the headband. So you have this external headband setup. Now it's worth noting there are differences in the Pimax. You can get different headband designs and you'll get different speakers set up here. But what you'll see with mine is that you have these external ear cups that work as speakers, and they'll either sit off the ear or you can add this extra attachment on them to make them sit on the ear. So it depends on your personal preference, whether you want to keep your ears cool or whether you want a more personal audio experience. You can choose between the two. It's quite a nifty design, but there are other headband setups. One of the things that I liked about the design of the Pimax is just the way that it fits and the comfort of it. As I said, you will note that in the box that you get these two different faceplate designs, really large, squashy, comfortable faceplates. You can swap them out quite easily. You can also remove the entire thing, obviously, to access the lenses as I've shown. And I found I was surprised by just how easy it was to wear this over a long period of time. Now, it is obviously still a large, heavy headset with cables attached to it that, you know, we're going to be pulling on you occasionally, and you'll have the same problem with the Vive Pro 2. Unfortunately, neither of them are wireless. Both require wires, and the wires are always a faff in my mind. It would be really nice when they move to wireless VR at some point in the future. But both headsets are really well designed in terms of the setup and the overall comfort of them. And the Pimax is really impressive because just the sheer size of the thing, and yet it still manages to be really comfortable. It's also nice that you have the ability to easily swap out those faceplates, but the overall design of both is also really a premium quality and a good finish on it. There's a lot of decent movement and flexibility in the headsets, and they just sit really well on the head. Now, as I said, these will work with the Vive controllers, and you can see either the traditional black ones that I had or the blue ones with the Vive Pro 2. And I always found these easy to use and comfortable and convenient with their charging capabilities. But you can also opt to use the Valve Index controllers with the Pimax. So there are options in terms of what you use for the controls, and if you buy it directly from Pimax, you can choose which controllers you get with it, or you can purchase the things separately. So you have the option, if you already have a Vive, the original Vive or the original Vive Pro, you can then just buy the headset and upgrade. If you've got the base stations and the controllers already, you can just buy the headset, so it's worth noting that. Now, the experience I had with both headsets was wonderful. I found that the Vive Pro 2 was a lot more user-friendly, though. I found that I could just plug it in and get on with it. Now, because both headsets are sort of based on that Valve ecosystem, working with SteamVR, they're really simple to set up, just plug and play and get on with it. The Vive, obviously, is the latest in a series of different HTC headsets, and a significant upgrade in terms of the internal visuals, but not much in terms of the external. But the thing is, it just works. It's plug and play, and you can just get on and game with it and have a great time. And I found it really easy to use. And because of the improvements they've made to the specifications, it's just been a really good experience in a number of different games. And I'll go into more depth on this in the review, obviously. There are some other things that make it a little bit different. For example, you have this glasses spacer system at the front where you can adjust sort of in and out depth of it, and that's quite a nice setup. And you also have the IPD adjustment wheel on there, and it is just a lot easier to use, and that's one of the things that I think is important to note. In my mind, in my experience, the Pimax Vision 8KX is the superior headset in terms of the overall quality of the games. It gives you a much better experience. You have a really clear screen display. You've got these massive large lenses right in front of your eye. It's really impressive when you can get it to run properly, and that is the biggest complaint I had about this headset, is that it's not terribly user friendly. It comes with this software called the Pi tool, and you need to use that software to adjust and customize the experience, because it allows you to either upscale the visuals or to use the native visuals on there in terms of the graphic delivery. And I found that I had to tweak the settings a lot, and there are a lot of different settings within Pi tool to get a good experience. And some games I launched and they just look really pixelated and rubbish, and not great, and then I had to play around in the Pi tool settings in order to customize and tweak things, and then I'd finally get it working and it would look good, and then I'd switch to a different game and that would look rubbish and I'd have to change the settings again. And I found that I was spending a lot of time messing about with the settings in Pi tool and trying to get it working so that the headset actually looked good and worked well, and I found that was a lot of faff and it really annoyed me. And I think if you're impatient and get frustrated easily by technology, as I do sometimes, then perhaps the Pimax isn't a great choice. But if you can tweak it and get it right, it is almost certainly the better looking of the two. And just there's so much to be said for those massive lenses and that display, because you just get fully immersed in the virtual reality world. You have a wonderfully wide view of it. It's all just there. It's really, really clear, crisp, fantastic display. And you see things that you haven't seen before, but just get lost in the gaming experience. I tried Boneworks, Half-Life Alyx, Superhot VR, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and a number of other games, including Project Cars 2 and things like that. And the experience was great. Some games just wouldn't play nicely with the Pimax, though, unfortunately. Things like Microsoft Flight Simulator just wouldn't work. So the overall conclusion is that both these headsets are fantastic. If you are already immersed in the Vive world and you're coming from a previous HTC Vive, then both make for a great option in terms of upgrades. However, the Vive Pro 2 is a lot easier to get into. It's a lot more user friendly. It's a lot more plug and play, and the overall experience is a lot simpler. However, if you want the very best, then the Pimax is probably it. It is expensive, but both headsets are, and you are paying a premium, but you are getting a very premium device. A really nice look and feel, a lot of clever thought that's gone into the design, and an overall wonderful experience. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well. And have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel. And most importantly, have a great life.